Today on the newscast, Vladimir Putin visits Iran to meet with Iranian leaders and Turkish President Recep Erdogan. What does this mean for America, the West, and Israel? And are there prophetic implications? Find out next. Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. It is only his second international trip since ordering the invasion of Ukraine back in February. But today, Tuesday, July 19th, Russian President Vladimir Putin landed in Tehran to meet with Iranian leaders, chief among them, of course, Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi and Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. At the same time, Putin will also meet with Turkish President Recep Erdogan while he is in Iran. That's right, Erdogan is in Tehran today as well, and the three leaders will then hold a trilateral meeting. Now, the main reason for this meeting and Putin's visit is supposed to be Syria and resolving the situation in Syria. But folks, it goes much deeper than that. We're going to unpack it in a minute. And are there prophetic implications as well? Before I do, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. And while you're at it, a quick programming note: tomorrow, Wednesday, July 20th, we will have a Watchman Newscast live stream right here on the channel between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We go for 1 solid hour live, and we take your questions. So be sure to bring some good ones for our Q&A session. I am sure that we will be talking about Russia, Turkey, and Iran meeting in Iran right now, folks. Major implications on a lot of levels. Let's unpack first what this meeting's all about, and secondly, the longer term and shorter term implications. First of all, again, Putin only his second international trip since the invasion of Ukraine began, but listening to Iranian officials today announcing this trip, heralding Putin's arrival, they literally rolled out a long red carpet for him when he landed. One top Iranian official said that Russia is Iran's #1 strategic partner in the world. Look no further than what we reported here in the newscast last week, that Iran is ready to supply hundreds of drones to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine. Folks, that's a tip of the iceberg when it comes to military economic cooperation between Russia and Iran. And both of them now are helping each other to evade international sanctions. Before, it was Russia helping Iran. Iran's been sanctioned for years now, of course, over its illicit nuclear program. But now Iran is having to return the favor, so to speak, as Russia is facing major international sanctions over the invasion of Ukraine. Folks, these two nations need each other. Before, Iran needed Russia a whole lot more than Russia needed Iran. But now, as Vladimir Putin scans the world landscape, he doesn't see many friends. But Iran has been loyal, by his side, standing with him. So you'll see that relationship, I believe, come closer together. Secondly, this is all part of what I call the gathering storm against America. I actually hosted a 1-hour special by that name last week, The Gathering Storm Against America, on TBN. If you missed it, you can check it out right here on our YouTube channel. Just go under, I believe it's under U.S. News. We have various categories here on the homepage. Under U.S. News, do some scrolling. You will find The Gathering Storm Against America. I strongly encourage you to watch it. We have this coalition: Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, the likes of Venezuela, and other rogue actors coming together, aligned as an anti-Western coalition, and in most cases openly anti-Israel as well. So this is part of that gathering storm, Russia and Iran together. On the Turkish front, why is Erdogan there? Well, I mentioned at the top, this meeting is ostensibly about Syria at the end of the day, and certainly that will be discussed, especially in the trilateral portion of this visit by Vladimir Putin. But Erdogan also would like to see Russia ease its blockade in Ukraine and release grain. We have obviously global food shortages looming, but what we have right now is Russia, Iran, Turkey basically carving up Syria. And that's where it gets to, or that's where we get to the broader implications of Putin's visit. Number one, Putin looking to legitimize himself internationally, showing that he's not isolated. And by the same token, this gives Iran legitimacy of sort to see a leader, even though he has been a pariah on the world stage since the Ukraine invasion, to see the leader of a world power visit Iran, literally the red carpet treatment. Erdogan, the leader of a NATO member nation, visiting Iran as well. So Iran also is saying, look at us, world, we are legitimate, even though they are the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Not the Iranian people. The Iranian regime is a terrorist regime. But they are being legitimized right now with the leaders of Turkey and Russia visiting. What does it mean for the United States? I think the timing here is no coincidence, and the West by extension. Joe Biden, obviously, was just in Israel and Saudi Arabia. We see really the lines are being drawn starkly, folks. On one hand, you have the West, Europe, the United States, Israel, and Sunni Arab nations like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, the Abraham Accords nations. On the other side, you have that Iranian axis, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, but also aligned with Russia, China, and North Korea. What about Israel? To me, this is troubling, highly troubling for Israel for a few reasons. Number one, Russia, Turkey, Iran, again, all at Israel's doorstep in Syria. But secondly, Israel has this so-called deconfliction mechanism with Russia in Syria, where Russia has stood back and allowed Israel to operate freely to strike Iran, Hezbollah, and assorted Iranian allies in Syria. Israel is trying, number one, to push them back from the Golan Heights, but secondly, to prevent Iran from delivering advanced weapons, in particular precision-guided missiles, into the hands of Hezbollah. I've been saying for weeks now, as tensions between Russia and Israel have risen, and we've documented this on the newscast, I've been saying for weeks that eventually I believe this deconfliction mechanism between Israel and Russia will end. And today this has to be troubling for Israel to see Vladimir Putin getting the warm embrace of Israel's greatest enemy, the Iranian regime. And you can bet your bottom dollar, as Erdogan, who's been no friend of Israel as well, although recently he's been putting on a charm offensive because his economy is in the tank and inflation in Turkey is through the roof. He's looking for all the friends he can get. But you can bet that Russia, Iran, and Turkey will be discussing Israel's role in Syria as well. And you can also bet that Iran and the Assad regime in Syria have been pushing Putin to crack down on Israel and end that deconfliction mechanism. So going to be very interesting to watch. Look, at the end of the day, you can tell a lot about a man and a nation by the company they keep, and the company Vladimir Putin keeps is Israel's greatest enemies, or are Israel's greatest enemies. The Iranian regime, the Assad regime, Hezbollah, Hamas, these are the allies of Vladimir Putin, Israel's greatest enemies. So I don't think Israel can trust Putin at all. And this brings us to the closing thought here, the prophetic implications that we mentioned at the top, folks. It's not hard to see if you watch this newscast. More importantly, if you read the Bible, crack it open to the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, that coming war of Gog and Magog we've discussed so much here on the newscast, where there is a, quote, latter days confederation led by Russia, I believe, aligned with Iran, Turkey, and other actors that come against Israel, again, in, quote, the latter days, latter, L-A-T-T-E-R. And the good news is this confederation does not get very far. They meet their demise on the mountains of Israel. Isn't it ironic, or maybe not, that all three, Russia, Iran, Turkey, are already at Israel's northern doorstep in Syria? Today's meetings in Iran are further evidence that that coalition is shaping up. But again, it does not end well for them. And the great thing is, God Almighty still sits on the throne. He knows the end from the beginning, and He is in control. Hey, reminder, live stream tomorrow right here between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, thanks so much for joining us. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.